going on, everyone? We got some surprising news this morning on behalf of the Utah Jazz as they traded Bojan Bogdanovic to the Detroit Pistons. But it's a trade that makes no sense, at least for the Utah Jazz. For the Detroit Pistons, this deal makes a lot of sense, actually. They're a very good young team, and getting a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic really does multiple things, right? You get a player that can come in, a veteran leader, a guy who averaged 18 points a game last season, put him around guys like Cade Cunningham who can create. You're in a great position already with the talent and youth that you have. You could be a very good team this upcoming season, and to add a piece like Bojan, I think that that's just huge for you, right? That's really good for the Pistons. Now, the other side of that is now they have another trade chip that is worth more value than Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee. Now, I don't understand it from the Jazz's perspective, but we'll dive into that in a second. Now, again, for Detroit, there, based on reports, were many teams that were very interested in Bojan Bogdanovic. So if you're Detroit, now you can field offers for anything, because you only gave up Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee based on reports, which there has to be more to that deal. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But assuming that that is the deal and that's all there is, if you're Detroit, that is great, because you're a young rebuilding team. You just got off of two guys. You could flip him. Like the Phoenix Suns were a team that were interested. Maybe you could go get like Jay Crowder and Dario Saric and a first, or a couple seconds or something like that. Whatever, anything. Because essentially, that would mean you turned Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee into a couple picks and maybe a Jay Crowder or something like that, which then you could use him to maybe go flip to another team for less, because your asking price, if you're Detroit, is probably nowhere near what Utah's was for Bojan Bogdanovic. And the reason this doesn't make any sense from a Utah side is Kelly Olynyk is a solid rotation guy, but he's not a guy you're going to use. So I don't really think that makes sense, because you already have Walker Kessler, you got Jared Vanderbilt, you got, Lauri Markkanen, you got all these big, why are you getting Kelly Olynyk? That just doesn't add up to me. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me from a standpoint, right? And not just the biggest thing here is they just did another 2-for-1 player swap, which they already have to cut two guys. Now they're going to have to basically waive another guy, because because it's a 2-for-1. So now they have to get rid of three guys. Something isn't adding up here. This just isn't making sense from a Utah Jazz perspective. And you're telling me there was no better deal out there than Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee? Those were the only two guys that you could have gotten if you were the Jazz. I believe that Phoenix would have at least given you a second or a couple seconds. So you could have at least got, if you had no problem taking on 2-for-1 guys, you could have gotten Jay Crowder and Dario Saric, who are both expiring, that you can get rid of, and you would have gotten some picks out of it. At least you got some picks, where this, you got nothing. I just don't believe Utah had no better options on the table when their asking price for Bojan Bogdanovic was a first, and you basically gave Bojan away for free. Something's not adding up for me from the Utah side. Now, there were talks of them and the Lakers. Maybe they just didn't want to do the Laker deal. But even then, you probably would have gotten at least one first. Yeah, you would have had to give up a Jordan Clarkson, but at least you're moving off a salary. You could have given off of, you give up, Malik Beasley, something like that. I don't know. It doesn't add up from the Utah Jazz side. I don't see this being a good trade for Utah. You gave away a really good, solid veteran rotation piece that many teams would probably love to have. And this is Danny Ainge we're talking about. He doesn't do deals like this. So it doesn't make sense. So either the trade itself is reported wrong, or there's more to it. Maybe a third team's getting involved, or maybe there's something else. Maybe the Lakers are getting involved. It's a 3-team deal. I don't know. But something isn't adding up here. Something doesn't make sense. You know, Kelly Olynyk, he's not going to get you anywhere close what Bojan Bogdanovic was going to get. And now what? Like, I don't see this deal as a positive. You know, like the Utah Jazz were better off waiving two guys and just doing nothing than trading Bojan Bogdanovic for Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee. I don't see that. I don't see how that makes sense. You know, I just think that was a silly trade. I think it was illogical. It just, especially when you hear all the reports that the Jazz really have nothing? Like, did they really have nothing? You know, it's just like they had no other options on the table. I don't believe that. So I really think there has to be more to this deal that we just don't know yet, or it was falsely reported, you know, which has happened. It happens, you know, somebody leaks that this trade is getting finalized, everyone runs away with it and reports on it, and then it turns out it doesn't happen and falls through. And that would just be something that would happen this offseason. I mean, we've seen this roller coaster ride all offseason, so it's just something to keep in mind. But what do you think? As always, this is a discussion, so I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Who do you think won this trade? Do you think the Detroit Pistons won the trade? Do you think Utah won the trade? Are you like me where you're like, this trade just doesn't make sense? Like, it doesn't. Like, from a Detroit Pistons standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. Like, this was brilliant for Detroit because they get a real veteran contributor that could really help way better than Saben Lee and Kelly Olynyk. And he's going to be a very valuable chip that you could just use and flip and get some assets that you'd get more assets than you would for each of those guys you just traded individually. So, I mean, this is a huge home run for the Detroit Pistons. But for Utah, it makes no sense. You didn't solve your biggest problem, which is having to cut guys. You actually made it worse. You got no assets. You got no real playable players that make sense for this team. Nothing about this trade makes any sense for the Utah Jazz. Maybe once everything gets finalized and officialized, maybe it will make sense and it'll shine a light on what is going on here. Because I don't know. I'm just shocked. Like, I'm just shocked that, like, that's all Utah got for Bojan Bogdanovic. I mean, they got an absolute king's ransom for Rudy Gobert, like a huge overpay. Like, you know, and then they went and got a decent haul. I still think the Knicks deal would have been better than what they got from the Cleveland Cavaliers for Donovan Mitchell, but still got a pretty reasonable trade for Donovan Mitchell, and then just got completely fleeced. At least by what it looked. You cannot tell me that the Detroit Pistons did not fleece Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz. They just got an 18 point per game, basically a 50, 40, 90 guy who could be a huge trade chip or be a really solid rotation guy on your young team that could be hugely beneficial. And you gave up Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee. You gave up a journeyman at this point, and is it like he's nothing more than like your eighth guy off the bench at best, and maybe even further than that on a championship team, and then as Saben Lee, who, yeah, he's a 23-year-old, you know, he was drafted in 2022, but like like maybe you like his potential upside, but you know, he's 23, he's been in the league a couple years already, hasn't really done too much to where you're like, oh yeah, like that's a really good young piece for the future. Like, he's probably nothing more than just like a rotation guy at best, like a solid backup point guard. He's also undersized. So it's just like, I don't see the logic in this. I don't know where this adds up. I don't know where this makes sense. You know, if a third team gets involved, or, you know, the Pistons are sending like 3 seconds or like a first or a heavily protected first, or anything, any kind of draft compensation. I like this trade a little better, but it just currently, as it stands, no pun intended, this trade is just terrible for the Utah Jazz, and a huge win for the Detroit Pistons. Seriously. But again, however you feel about it, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions, whether you agree with me, disagree with me. Who do you think won this trade? Let me know all those things down in the comment section. Quick little shameless plug, go subscribe to my second channel, link down in the description below. As it stands, Lakers, I am a diehard Laker fan. I love talking Lakers. I could talk Lakers all day, just like I could talk about all sports all day. And I'm sure many of you watching to this point enjoy my commentary, enjoy these discussions. So go check out the Lakers channel. Even if you're not a Laker fan and you just like hearing me talk about stuff in basketball, go over there and subscribe. I'll link down in the description below. I promise you won't be disappointed. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.